guys, welcome back to Easy Grip Company channel. Today I want to talk to you guys about the unions and how to get into the unions, what it takes and how, what the best route is into the union for you if you're a guy that's still non-union trying to get into Local 80 or even Local 399 for that matter, or 728, any of the unions. So here in LA, it's all based on contract services and the number of days that you have on a union set. You have to have 30 commercial days on a union set in order to become a union member, to be allowed into the union. So it's kind of a catch-22 though, because you can't work on a union job unless you're in the union, and you can't get in the union unless you have 30 union days on a shoot. So how do you do that? It's a question I get asked a lot. Hey, can you help me get in the union? Hey, how do I get in the union? And I just want to give you guys a little bit of info on it today. So there's two main ways into the union. One of them is by getting onto a show that starts out non-union and then it flips, meaning that the unions come down and sign the production company that's shooting it to a contract, and the show will then become union. And once it becomes union, everybody who was on that show already gets to stay on the show as technically union members, getting union days, although they're not automatically admitted into the union. You still have to get your 30 days. It is a way that you can work on union jobs as a union member toward getting your days. A lot of shows will set up that way. They'll start non-union knowing they're going to flip, and it's a good opportunity for a lot of guys to get their group into the union. So a lot of gang bosses and key grips will set it up that way so that they're hiring the guys that are in their circles that are non-union on these jobs, specifically knowing that it's going to flip to get them days. The other way in is basically through the back door. You're going to have your key grip or your gang boss that's going to allow you to work on the job, although you're not in the union and technically you shouldn't be working there. If you hire someone last minute, you call the hall, you try to find someone through the hall, and the hall doesn't have anyone available. It was after closing time and I needed to call somebody to be there at 4 or 5 in the morning. How am I going to get a guy to show up? And a lot of key grips will do it that way. They'll wait till the last second and they'll call in a guy and try to get a guy through the hall, but obviously the hall is closed and they still need that guy, so the unions will allow them to hire someone that's non-union in that case. So that's one way to get days. Another way is for you to basically be someone's uncle or brother or cousin or nephew or whatever it is. And that, I hate to say it, but this union, this industry is really, it's a lot based on who you know, who wants to hire you versus someone else because they like your attitude or they like you or they're family member or whatever it is. There's still a lot of that goes on here. And coming from someone that doesn't have any family in the union, that was a big obstacle in the beginning. I really had to hustle and make myself valuable to the guys that hired me so that they would want to keep hiring me. It is a very, what have you done for me lately kind of business. You're only as good as your last job, and you screw something up and you might not get hired on the next one. So there's a lot of pressure in being reliable, being on time. On time is probably the biggest thing in this business. You cannot be late for any reason. There is no excuse for being late. In 10, 12 years of being in this business, I've only been late twice. And both of the people who I was on their job and I was late have never hired me again. So it really doesn't take a lot. You can just make one mistake and you're out. So it really is a high pressure environment, and you got to be ready for that. And then it's also a lot like high school. You gotta be buddies. You gotta be friends with everybody. You gotta be someone that people want to be around for 12 hours a day, because we're there. You know, as a group, you spend more time on set with the guys around you than you do with your family at home. So, you know, it matters a lot. Your personality, just being easygoing and not being a complainer, and trying to, you know, keep a good attitude, whether you're working on your 5th hour of the day or your 15th hour of the day. Somebody who's smiling and laughing and having a good time is going to make a good impression. So, yeah, so just to get back to the union specifically, you know, there are some other things that I want to talk to you about. So contract services is part of the industry that basically polices who's allowed to work and who's not allowed to work based on your affiliation with the union, and whether or not you've paid your dues, whether or not you've taken all of the required safety classes. And they give us a passport, you know, or safety passport, that has on the back all of the classes that are required for your specific union, and it verifies that you've taken all the classes and that they're all current, because some of them you have to take every couple of years, you have to refresh. And it's also the place that production is going to call your name into, so they'll call and they'll talk to contract services, or they'll pull it up on the computer and get into the back door in the system, and they can log in your information and check your union status. So almost every job, on a union job, you're going to get checked by production. They're going to run everybody's names to make sure that they're not hiring anybody that's not in the union, because if they do hire someone that's not in the union, they can actually be grieved by that union for hiring non-union personnel on a union job. And if that happens, it costs production a lot of money. So, you know, production's going to cover their butts, and they're going to call all the people into the union and check on them. So that's one of the ways it can be difficult as you're getting into the union. While you may have been hired by the Key Grip to be on that job, even though you're not in the union, he's trying to help you out to get you days. Contract services is the backstop that's going to check that. And at the end of your run, you've got all your days. Let's say you got 35 days. You go into contract services, you request, you know, that they check your days. They basically contact all the production companies that you've worked for, and they verify that you worked on that job, that you were on the call sheet, and that you're also you were allowed to work that day. So they'll check based on the unions, whether or not they were in permits that day, or whether or not, you know, there was some reason that you were able to be hired. You could sometimes get a waiver from the union that'll say, hey, on this day, this guy can work on this job. And it's basically the union's call at that point, whether or not you're going to get that day. But initially, contract services, if they see that things aren't lining up and you weren't really supposed to work that day, they're going to clip that day. So you're down to 34 days now, because this one specific job, they weren't in permits and you weren't supposed to be working technically. So when you go into contract services and you think you have your days, a lot of guys run into this and they find out, wait a minute, half my days don't count because I was on this job and that job wasn't supposed to hire me. And even though I did work on those days on a union job, they're discounting those days at contract services because technically you weren't allowed to be there. You know, there's not really other penalties involved, you know, after the fact, mostly. The unions aren't going to go back and grieve a company for something that happened 8 months ago, typically. But it just basically counts against you, and you've got to make that up. So when I went in to get my days as a grip, I didn't go in until I had like 50 days, because I was working pretty consistently, and it didn't really hurt me to not be in, because I was able to get into some of these jobs through you know, people that I knew and productions that I knew that were able to hire me on those jobs, or that were willing to hire me on those jobs. And eventually, though, I did go down and I did get my days counted, and lo and behold, they marked off, I think 15 days didn't count that were part of the days that I was saying that that should have counted. So I was still good. I still got my 30 days and I was in the union. But when you come in that way, there's different levels too. So when you get in 30 days on commercials, you're only allowed to work on commercials if you come in through commercials, because the way that they separate it is you either need 30 commercial days to get in the union, but you need 90 commercial days to become what they call to get on the experienced roster, to actually get on the Black Book roster that allows you to work on TV and features. You've got to work 90 union days to do that. Whereas if you had come in through TV or features, if you got on a show that flipped, you would be allowed straight onto that roster after only 30 days in the TV or feature world. So you got to know that going in. You got to know where your days count, what they count for, because you might have 30 total days, but 15 of them were in commercials and 15 of them were in TV and features, and they count differently. So you got to know that going in. You're not going to get directly onto the experienced roster based on that. And I didn't get on the experienced roster for almost 9 years, because I didn't know that you had to request being put on that roster. I thought after 90 days they would just automatically add me to that roster, but that didn't happen. I didn't figure that out until I got called to do a feature. And mind you, I had worked on 10 or 12 other features and TV shows during that time, but for whatever reason, production hadn't figured that out. And I was in this gray area that I was working on these shows, but technically I wasn't supposed to be there because I wasn't on the experienced roster. And when it came down to this one particular job that actually caught it, I wasn't even able to work the job. I ended up losing the job. It was like 12-day feature reshoots because I wasn't on the experienced roster. And although I had 10 years in the business and thousands of working days by then, I had never requested being put onto the experienced roster. So there's also a whole nother set of classes that are involved at contract services. So there's more in-depth safety classes that are required to be on that roster. And honestly, I had no idea. I literally was working in the business for almost 10 years and didn't know. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up, kind of break down a few things with the union, and hopefully you guys are well on your way to joining, because becoming a local 80 grip is probably the best career move I ever made. I mean, it's set me up to do everything I've done. I've become a key grip. I've worked with some of the biggest DPs in the Hollywood. Key grip, I keyed several jobs for Maddie Libatique last year. I've done, I'm going to do a bunch of name dropping here, but basically, once I was in the union, my whole life in this industry changed for the better. And seeing non-union guys now and still working non-union jobs here and there, I see the world that they're in, and it's infinitely better if you can get into the union. Don't be a lifer non-union guy because you think it's too hard. You can do this. You just have to focus and set your mind to it and say, I'm going to be a key grip. I'm going to be a local 80 grip, and you got to want it. So anyway, hope this helps kind of break it down, explain it a little bit, and let me know if you got any questions. All right, guys, thanks.